Welcome to Mega Stadiums. Today we're heading to Glasgow's East End, to Paradise, Celtic Park, the largest stadium in Scotland, and on a European night under the lights, one of the most ferocious atmospheres in world football. By every measure, a magnificent ground. And yet, a season ticket waiting list running into the tens of thousands. Cash reserves reported at around £100 million. Years of fans demanding the ground be made bigger, and not a single crane on the horizon. No plans, no applications, nothing. So, here's the question. Why won't Celtic expand Celtic Park? The answer says more about the economics of modern football than you'd think. This is the story of Paradise, where it came from, what it is, and why its future is frozen. Let's get started. To understand why the money isn't being spent, you first have to understand what this club and this ground actually are. Because Celtic did not begin as a football club in any conventional sense. It began as a charity. In November 1887, in the Church Hall of St Mary's in the Calton, a district of Glasgow's East End, steeped in poverty, an Irish Marist brother named Walfrid formally constituted the Celtic Football and Athletic Club. His purpose was not silverware, it was food. Walfrid had watched the children of impoverished Irish immigrant families go hungry in the shadow of the shipyards, and he had already set up charity dinner tables to feed them. A club born quite literally as a soup kitchen. That is the emotional bedrock beneath everything Celtic has ever been. The first Celtic Park was laid out in Parkhead in 1888, built in 6 months by an army of Irish volunteers. But in 1892, the landlord saw what he had on his hands and raised the rent from around £50 a year to £450. The club refused and moved a couple of hundred yards across the road to a former brickyard. The site Celtic occupies to this day. The old ground had sat beside a cemetery. The new one, by comparison, felt like heaven. One journalist called it Paradise. The name never left. The new site was developed into a vast oval of terracing, and as Celtic grew into one of the giants of the British game, so did the crowds. On New Year's Day 1938, an Old Firm derby against Rangers drew a record 83,500 people. A wall of humanity on those great banked terraces. Cover went over the standing areas, floodlights arrived, and for decades Paradise stood as one of the largest and loudest grounds in the country. And then, by the early 1990s, it was almost gone. The terracing was crumbling. The club was drowning in debt. The Old Board, a small group of controlling families, so cautious with money they were nicknamed the Biscuit Tin Board, were pushing a doomed plan to abandon Parkhead altogether and move to a greenfield site at Cambuslang. Worse, the Taylor Report. Celtic had no money to comply and no realistic plan to survive. By March 1994, with the Bank of Scotland pressing and the club days from insolvency, it was genuinely existentially over. What saved Celtic was a Scottish-Canadian businessman in a flat cap. Fergus McCann, the man in the bunnet, flew in from Montreal, took control, guaranteed the debt, and injected millions of his own money at the exact moment the club was staring into the abyss. On the steps of Celtic Park, Brian Dempsey, one of the men who had fought the Old Board for years, announced it to the crowd. The game is over, the rebels have won. And then McCann did something extraordinary. He tore up the Cambuslang plan, committed to Parkhead, and refused to build small. Simply bolting seats onto the old terraces would have capped the ground at around 34,000. McCann believed Celtic could fill far more, so in the summer of 1994, the Jungle, the Celtic end, and the Rangers end were demolished, leaving only the main stand standing. Celtic spent an entire season playing home games at Hampton Park, paying £500,000 in rent. The rebuild was funded by the club and its own supporters. Over £26 million raised through share issues, 10,000 ordinary fans buying in, season tickets leaping from 7,000 to 26,000. Phase by phase, the new stands rose, and in August 1998, the job was complete. A 60,000-seat all-seater stadium, at the time the biggest club ground in Britain, built for a cost of around £40 million. McCann sold up in 1999, handing over to principal shareholder Dermot Desmond, and left the club transformed and stable. It is, almost beat for beat, the same act of salvation through rebuilding that gave Rangers their modern Ibrox across the city. That stadium is essentially the one that exists now. 60,411 seats, a Desso Grassmaster hybrid pitch since 2017. 3 enormous modern stands, the north on the site of the old jungle, and the Jockstein and Lisbon Lions stands at either end, wrapping around 3 sides in a continuous 2-tier bowl. But the numbers aren't really what make Paradise special. It's the noise. Celtic Park's atmosphere is the intangible that no new build in the world can manufacture. The Green Brigade in full voice, the enormous choreographed tifos, a European night when the whole ground is singing as one. It is consistently rated among the great football experiences on earth, and it is the product of a specific identity 140 years in the making. Fittingly, Celtic have often led the way on how that atmosphere is housed. In 2016, after 5 years of negotiation, they became the first British club to install modern rail seating, a safe-standing section of around 2,600 places in the corner of the Lisbon Lions stand. It was a genuine pioneering moment for the British game, and supporter campaigns to expand standing have rumbled on ever since. And yet, sitting quietly at the centre of all this is the problem. The main stand, the one part McCann's rebuild, left untouched. Its steel work dates back to 1929. It was redeveloped in 1971, reusing that old steel, given a red brick facade for the club's centenary in the late 1980s, and barely touched since. Unlike Ibrox, where the historic main stand is a listed masterpiece and the pride of the ground, Celtic's main stand is the opposite, the tired, aging piece with facilities widely described as poor. Cramped concourses, dated hospitality, press facilities so limited the club has held European post-match conferences in a tent outside. It is the one stand crying out to be replaced, and it sits at the dead center of every conversation about the future. The desire to build is absolutely real, and it isn't new. For years, fans, pundits, and former players have floated concepts. Tear down that aging main stand, replace it with a towering 3-tier structure to match the north. Fill in the corners and push Celtic Park towards 70,000, even 78,000 seats, a truly colossal arena. To be clear, those are fan and concept proposals, not club plans, but the demand underneath them is genuine. The season ticket waiting list runs well into 5 figures, reported at various points anywhere from 10,000 to 18,000 or more, and renewal rates sit at an astonishing 98 to 99% every single year. People simply do not give up their seats. There is a generation of Celtic supporters who cannot get in, which brings us to the strangest part of the whole story: the money. According to reporting of the club's September 2025 meeting with the Celtic Shareholders Association, Celtic are sitting on cash reserves estimated at around £100 million. And the club's position, as reported from that same meeting, is that this money is held for financial sustainability and UEFA compliance. It is not earmarked for the stadium and not for the squad either. So, supporters are left with an obvious burning question. If there's £100 million in the bank, a waiting list out the door, and a stand that everyone agrees needs replacing, why won't they build it? The first answer is cost, and it's a wall. A like-for-like rebuild of the main stand is estimated in the region of £35 to £40 million, but a full, ambitious redevelopment that meaningfully grows capacity would realistically run to £90 million or more in the current market, with reported figures climbing higher still. And it would almost certainly cost Celtic a season of disruption, because there is nowhere to put 8,000 displaced season ticket holders while you knock their stand down. For context, this is an era where Real Madrid took on a decades-long loan to remodel the Bernabeu, and where brand new 60,000 plus grounds are creeping toward £1 billion. Stadium building has never been more expensive, but cost alone isn't the real reason. The real reason, the reveal at the heart of this whole story, is far more revealing about modern football. According to that same reporting of the September 2025 CSA meeting, a rebuild of the main stand is, in the club's own words, not viable while we remain in the SPFL. Think about the economics. There is little point adding 15 or 20,000 seats you would only fill for a handful of European and Old Firm nights a year. Celtic so dominate Scottish football that the league title is often mathematically won with weeks to spare, and a mid-table home game on a wet Wednesday would never come close to filling a 78,000 seat bowl. The extra capacity only truly pays for itself in a bigger, richer league. A European Super League, an Atlantic League, some new competitive landscape that generates the revenue and the meaningful fixtures to justify it, and no such league is on the horizon. So, Celtic's expansion isn't really being blocked by ambition or even by money. It's being held hostage by the economics of the very league they dominate, waiting on a change to European football that may never actually come. There's a lighter complication on top of it, that 1929 steelwork and some restricted view issues make a clean rebuild genuinely awkward. Not a hard-listed building lock like Ibrox faces, but a real engineering headache. And so what's actually happening at Celtic right now is honest and small. Recent investment has gone into the training facilities at Barrowfield and Lennoxtown, not the stadium. A long-mooted hotel now looks unlikely. A planned museum may simply fold into the stadium itself. There's been significant maintenance spend and cosmetic upgrades to hospitality. But on the main stand, on expansion, on the big vision, by the club's own admission, there is nothing concrete at all. And with an interim chairman in place and a section of the support running a Not Another Penny campaign, the pressure over that inaction has rarely been louder. So here's the paradox, resolved into a question. Fergus McCann built his Celtic Park for a future the club chose to believe in, and he was proved right. The next Celtic Park is waiting for a future that simply hasn't arrived. Paradise has the atmosphere, the demand, even the money. What it lacks is a reason that makes financial sense today. So, should Celtic spend the 100 million and build it anyway, or are they right to wait? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss anything. Thanks for watching. See you next week.